one of the best gifts I was ever given was by one of my former managers, and he really instilled in me just the opportunity to be exposed to different things. So, provide those staff members opportunities to dabble in other areas. So, maybe it's a lower level individual who wants to be a manager but doesn't have any budgeting experience. So, help them with that. Show them the budget. Talk to them about what it means, why you're putting things in different places, why why you're saving things for other areas. Just talk to them about the real world applications of what we do. I think is really important because we want all of our folks to, at least I do. I want them all to, if they're going to leave in a good light. So they think well of me and the institution, and maybe will recommend people back to work here that they know. And I've had that happen. So I think that's the highest form of flattery.
Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. All right, this is Tom Dauber with the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. I am so thrilled today to have April Novotny on the show today. Now, April and I haven't known each other very long. We've done a little work together, but one of the things I'm so excited about is that April is the first client that I've ever had on my show. Everybody else has been old colleagues and friends, and I've actually gotten to provide some services for Capital University, where she serves as the Vice President of Advancement. And the thing that I'm so excited about, and most people wouldn't know this, but my dad is a Capital school grad. My uncle is a Capital school grad and record holder on the basketball team. And both of my aunts are Capital grads, and my stepson is there right now. So it meant a lot to be able to help Cap out, and wanted to be sure to make sure that I thanked you immediately, because it was just so meaningful to be able to support you, April.
Well, thanks, Tom. I'm honored to be on here, and you did provide quite the service to us and guided us along the way. So appreciate it.
Well, that's kind of you to say. So, this is a fundraising podcast, but before we jump into all the business, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do. How do you spend your time when you aren't focused on raising money for Capital University?
Sure. So right now, it's winter in Ohio. And so a lot of my time is spent at hockey rinks. We have a high school senior who plays travel hockey. And so we are all throughout the country and in central Ohio at hockey rinks of all different shapes and sizes. But when I'm not at a hockey rink, we have a garden, and I like to can.
Oh,
So I dabble in the gardening, I dabble in the canning, and then we have two medium-sized dogs, and so they require much walking, and so I enjoy walking with them quite a bit.
my goodness. Well, what type of dogs do you have?
So they are both white German Shepherd, Siberian Husky mixes.
Okay.
I grew up with very large dogs, so I think they're medium. Some people see them and they think they're giant, but they're both very hairy and
Hmm.
shed quite a bit. But also, the husky part of them needs that exercise, and the shepherd part does too. So we try to keep them
Well,
active, and
yeah,
this helps me.
you're preaching to the choir here. I just spent an hour today vacuuming. We've got a Bernese Mountain Dog who is just dropping fur everywhere, and a Golden Retriever does the same thing. Fortunately, our Golden Doodle does not shed, but we call them fibers of love and joy in our home. So I am right with you. Now, you mentioned canning tomatoes. Do you have something specifically that you like to can?
So I like canning jams most.
Oh, I
So I
see.
strawberry, rhubarb, peach. I like jams, not jellies, jams.
Yes.
They're thicker. But I also like canning tomatoes. I've canned peaches before, pickles, cabbage.
Hmm.
We've actually canned meat before,
Yeah.
like taco meat. So yeah, I'm open to suggestions, but
Wow.
the jams are kind of my passion.
My father-in-law likes to can fish,
Oh, yeah.
so he'll pickle different whitefish and things. He lives up north, in the Wisconsin, and he's from the northern climes there. But yeah, my mom was a big canner. My wife used to can a good bit, but I remember waking up, 9 a.m. on a weekend, and the whole house would just smell of tomatoes. Right? She'd have the giant, deadly pressure cooker, all
Yes.
that sort of thing. But
Yes.
good memories. So, okay, well, that's fantastic. We've got some things in common there. Now, you've been in fundraising since the '90s.
Yes.
That's a pretty long time. How did you get your start?
So, I went to school at Ohio Northern. I didn't really know as an undergrad what the advancement office was. I
Hmm,
mean, I knew the building it was in, but I didn't know anything about it or that it even really existed. Maybe subconsciously, I knew like people gave money back for scholarships, but beyond that, no clue.
right.
Um, my senior year, they had asked me to be one of the co-chairs for our senior class gift. And so I worked with the staff in the advancement office and got introduced to them. We had a very successful campaign. It was fantastic. We celebrated, um, and was asked after graduation to take a role uh, with the office. I was a field biology, environmental studies major, took some
Huh.
civil engineering classes. I knew what I didn't want to do, which was go behind a microscope. Just wasn't my passion. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I went into the job, knowing that if I got it, then the administrative experience wouldn't hurt me. And if not, I could go back to being biology queen.
Hmm.
And so my role was very eclectic. I could write a book about it. No one would buy it because they think it was false. I My title was assistant in development.
Hmm.
I was the editor of the magazine. I was in charge of the call center. I did development calls with the corporate foundation relations director and the plan giving director.
Nice.
I did alumni events. I handled town and gown with the president. I was kind of the unofficial guardian of the president's wife
In your
during
first job,
events.
your
Yeah.
first year out of,
So
out
it
of
was
college.
Yeah, and the editorial part actually was farthest from any skill set I had because I was used to writing for scientific journals, but I had a
Oh.
fantastic team there, and they knew what they were doing, and I nodded my head a lot and smiled, and they made that magazine happen and made it all magic, so
So you had so many things on your plate. You so you got to try everything out, but you really had some options because you could have gone that communications route. You could have gone in some of the more external affairs, but not fundraising routes that are out there. Um, what what made you decide to stick with the fundraising bit?
um, I I really liked the people part of it, and as I got into it more, it was finding those intersections between the donors' passions and what the university needed.
Hmm.
And just the joy it brought everyone from the university perspective. The CFO was happy with me if I brought in some unrestricted cash. The pharmacy dean was happy with me if we could get this lecture series named. So the donors were happy. It was just it felt very fulfilling to me. I also think we are in a unique profession.
Mm.
Every single day I'm on campus, I get to see the rewards of what I do. I get to see those students and know that they're there, many of them because of the work that I do, and that without that work, many of them wouldn't be able to further themselves through the education they want. So it's very, very rewarding.
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. It reminds me when I first got into higher ed. Now I'd spent 7.5 years at a faith based nonprofit, but I kind of had some options because I did some writing in my previous role, in addition to fundraising. But I remember I was talking to a small liberal arts school, and they had just recently made the transition from college to university, And the person that was recruiting me was a dear person, and I really considered it going that direction. But it was for a communications position. But she told me this story. I'll never forget. This was the magazine where this school went, public as a university. No longer are we anonymous college. Now we'll be anonymous university. And she misspelled university on the cover of the magazine,
Oh,
and it went to print. And it was like, wow. And but this person told me this story just to demonstrate to me how gracious and kind their president was, because she was thinking, man, if you were going to fire somebody for something, that might be the thing to do. But yeah, I'm so glad that I went into fundraising like you did, if only to avoid some of the potential public disasters that can happen when we're in charge of publishing.
yeah, yeah. It definitely is there. I was honestly scared to death every time a publication came out for what we potentially might have missed.
Hmm.
So I hear exactly what you're saying.
Oh my goodness. So, other than a few years at Ohio Northern, go Polar Bears. I used to the dean at the pharmacy school there used to be on staff faculty at OSU, and I worked with him a bit. Good people, but so you've spent your entire career at Capital. Now, when I talk to VPs at different institutions, I find that it can differ greatly from one college, one organization to another. Can you tell us about what it means to be the vice president at Capital University?
Sure. So for me, being a vice president means advocating for my staff.
Hmm.
Um, there's the nuts and bolts, setting the philanthropic goals in conjunction with our CFO.
Hmm.
There's the advancement liaison to the board of trustees and being in constant communication with them, leading my team, uh, managing and developing them. And I really feel strongly about that. I feel it's very important to personalize each one of them,
Hmm.
um, on how they get ahead, whatever that means for them. I'd love for folks to stay their entire lives. I realize they're not going to, all of them. But if I can help them along the way and have honest conversations with them about what they like, what they don't like, what they'd like to learn a little bit more about, I think that's an important role for me also.
Hmm. Oh, that's great. Um, you bring up the importance of longevity and keeping people, but acknowledging that they're going to move on. That's a real problem in our industry. Yeah, I remember learning many years ago. So sometimes people tell you stories and you just remember them, right? I mean, I think that's why I'm doing this podcast, is so people can hear stories and it can impact them and help them understand. But if you're in a one development officer shop, you're not going to meet other development officers as
Yeah.
easily and hear those stories. But I remember one of my managers was at a small private school. She left for a different role and really had a bunch of gifts teed up, and she was explaining to me that it took her successor, even though they were someone that was already on staff, 12 months at least to get those gifts closed, because they were kind of starting back at square one with the trust and the building rapport with the donors. So I really like that you're talking about, how do I keep my people. That was always a big concern for me as a manager. And speaking of which, you've been 24 years at the same institution. I can probably count on one hand the people I know, that have done that sort of thing, especially in the higher executive realms of fundraising. Can you talk about why you've stayed at Capital so long?
Sure. I've been very fortunate. I've developed some amazing personal and professional relationships over the years with coworkers, um, donors, alumni, board members, and you know, you I think that's those interconnections are probably what make me stay. I haven't always loved all my bosses. I haven't always loved all the people I've worked with over the years, but there's always enough of them that it makes it okay. I don't want to be someone who doesn't want to get up every single day. Uh, saying that, I don't like my job. I don't like my job. I don't like my job. There will always be days like that, but not
Mm,
every day.
yeah.
And I haven't had that here. And I didn't have that at the other institutions I've worked either. So I've been very fortunate. Um, there have been hard days, obviously, but really, really like the people I work with. And it means a lot. It means a lot to me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, I know among our listeners right now, somewhere there's a president or an executive director or a fellow vice president worried that their fundraiser, their major gift officer, or one of their other fundraising staff might leave. What advice do you have for an individual trying to retain fundraising talent like yourself?
So, one of the best gifts I was ever given was by one of my former managers, and he really instilled in me uh, just the opportunity to be exposed to different things. So, provide those staff members opportunities to dabble in other areas. You heard a little bit about my first job and how it was just this hodgepodge of all everything, and that was actually a gift. And honestly, I didn't know any different at the time, so I thought it was normal. Um, and so, exposing them to these other opportunities. Other tasks, other career paths, and having conversations with them because they're people, um, about what they want to do with their life or what they think they might want to do with their life,
Mhm.
um, and then helping them gain them skills. So maybe it's a lower level individual who wants to be a manager but doesn't have any budgeting experience. So
Mhm.
help them with that.
Yeah.
Show them the budget. Talk to them about what it means, why you're putting things in different places, why you're saving things for other areas. Um, just talk to them about the real world applications of what we do. I think is really important because we want all of our folks to, at least I do. I want them all to, if they're going to leave in a good light,
Yeah.
so they think well of me and the institution, and maybe will recommend people back to work here that they know. And I've had that happen. So I think that's the highest form of flattery.
It's such a small world, April. I mean, I can think of even recently, conversations I've had with people that I didn't hire. I had to say goodbye to them, as candidates. Um, Yet we're still connecting and we're still talking and following each other on LinkedIn, and I'm learning from them. And you always want to make sure that if you do have to send somebody off, that you try to do it with kindness. That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.